Hi everyone, Mike Levin. Thursday, June 30th at about 9 a.m. on my way into work. And on yesterday's video that I ended up calling SEO Science, I rambled on, but I think never really got to the two key points that I wanted to make. So I'll make today's video as short as that one was long. And the first point being that it's loud as I walk along here. No. The first point being is that it took me a long time to call myself an SEO. I was probably with a particular company called Scala Digital Signage for about 8 years. There was about 2 years in the middle where I was with another company called Profit 21. And I guess it was at Profit 21 that I repositioned myself to actually be an SEO, because I was brought in there to be a webmaster, and then I mastered the technique of XSL Transformations, which is basically reaching into raw, unformatted, unstylized data on the left-hand side and sort of slice and dicing it into pages which are still raw and unformatted, but partitioned into pages on the right-hand side, and then swooping in to stylize them all. This was even before the days of reliable CSS, so I would stylize it by applying secondary XSL transformations that added table structure and font tags and all the stuff that you don't do anymore today because of CSS. But back in those days, it was a wonderful way to get precise scalpel-like control over thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pages, and to arrange them, crafting them almost like reaching into an iceberg and shaping it from your fingertips. It was a very powerful feeling. It was one of my best tricks, and I used it so often that eventually I just started calling myself an SEO, because this is what I was doing. By shaping information, you're, by virtue of shaping it, inherently making it more findable, increasing the surface area, increasing the total number of core targeted terms that you're targeting by virtue of slicing or dicing them into smaller page units, casting a larger net, more pages, more chances to bring in traffic on those targeted keyword terms. Very old school, very long tail, and very much what Google is cleaning up today. And now the very cleanup job takes a whole different set of skills, and it's not just the cleanup job really that we're focusing on here. It's truly satisfying the web visitor, which we all should have been doing originally, but in order to win at the game, you had to concede to the realities. And so SEO was not always, in the past, about doing what was best for both the user and the search engine, even though we always said it was, because we created too many individual pages, and it created a navigation problem by which only Google was the viable way of making sense of it all. So it really just played right into Google after all. And then you add to this that like half those people doing this were also participating in ye old AdSense network. So you made money just merely by virtue of spinning out these pages, and plenty of sites were, one-off, slash and burn, scorched earth domains. So you moved in, you spun out a few million pages on some niche topic where you knew there was traffic with just enough content to support the pages. You ran AdSense. Now, of course, I never did this, but this is widely done in the field. I ended up working for agencies which worked for usually startups or public companies, and they really couldn't get away with this. So they used similar techniques just to shape their websites, to turn their websites into more of something of the output of a query than a handcrafted, back in those days, front page. You remember Microsoft front page? Yeah, those were not pleasant days. So my techniques were sort of a super kung fu, and so much so that it led to my moving to New York, my repositioning myself as an SEO reluctantly kicking and screaming because, you know, SEO. Anyway, it's 10 years after that, the move to New York City to be full-time in this field, and I'm back in-house, which means I'm not working for marketing agencies, but I'm working for a publisher who needs this work done for themselves directly for their own benefit across a network of sites. And I'm there for the long haul, and I can do projects that are much deeper and be more involved and closer to implementation than I ever have been in the past, since the days when I was at the helm of all the publishing machinery itself at Scala and Profit 21. And it's a wonderful feeling, I have to say. It's food for the soul to be really that close to the action again, with the publishing technologies in the state that they're in. Everything that used to be my kung fu is just oh so passé now. Along comes Ruby on Rails and Google Docs and all these things that made the difficult database stuff that I used to do, back-end controls for content management systems, second nature, old hat, default stuff that just ships with every computer and has templates that you can slam out any any interface that you need to control the data on the back end. So that's a solved problem, and it's all about front end now and all this visualization stuff and all these JavaScript libraries. And that stuff tends to not be as search friendly to Google according to the old ways that they would crawl and index all the information of the web. And that's okay, because all these changes are sort of culminating into a grand crescendo of a web cleanup that we were told was coming way back in 2008, when Eric Schmidt stood in front of a room full of magazine publishers and said, we're going to clean up the cesspool that is the internet, and we're going to use brands as a mechanism to give safe harbor to major publishers. And so that was the Vince algorithm update that came before the Panda and then later Penguin updates that were essentially the war against spammers, web spammers beginning. And you know, that was 2009 when we started to see the first actual stuff coming out, algorithmically changing the results. And it's 2016, so we're a good 7 years into that, and it's a new landscape. A lot of the old stuff is still poking through, but those top criteria that used to be so important, aligning the title tag to the headline, to the URL, to the anchor text of links leading to the page, those used to be, what was that, 1, 2, 3, 4 top criteria. Each one of those was, say, 20%, 20, 40, 60, 80. And the remaining 20% of what was important was spread along all the other criteria, keyword density, all that stuff people talk about as a list of, you know, 100, 200, 1,000 things that Google looks at as additional factors. Well, I believe now that all those additional factors are now being looked at by a series of systems that are roughly lumped up under the label of RankBrain. And instead of those 4 criterias, each being about 20%, you pull one of them out. I'm not sure which one, but you know, let's call, for the sake of argument, links leading to, no, see, links are still going to be very important. Headlines. Let's say we pull out headlines, for example, and then we plug in the 20% remaining, the 20% difference with RankBrain, and say all these other factors rolled up into one is now one of the top most important criterias. But really, that was already the bottom 20% spread out over 1,000 factors, you know, the 5th criteria. So the more things change, the more things stay the same. It's just been a formalization and a promotion of all the factors that are the ones that we used to really not think about, being controlled by RankBrain instead of a dozen diverse little systems that tried to step in with the old universal alteration algorithm to step in over and change the default search results. That doesn't happen anymore. What RankBrain decides about, relevancy is baked right into the primary results. This is why you don't hear so much about universal anymore. This concept of a primary default top 10 search results, the top 10 blue links, that very old school world of thinking about SEO, that gets stepped on and have alternative data types combed in. Well, while it's still happening, it's hardly ever talked about anymore. And then there's always some, primary type of universal result that gets its own strong identity, that becomes its own subject of discussion, like the way the Twitter entry gets put in there, and of course local, whatever it is these days, 3-pack, 7-pack. I think they're down to 3-packs. What else? Of course, news. But you don't see so much video thumbnails as you used to, and of course, author thumbnails are gone. So I believe it's a grand unification of how search results are supposed to look across platforms, so that mobile looks predominantly the same as desktop, which looks predominantly the same as tablet. And the end result is everything starts to look like mobile. I mean, we've all started to see that as part of the responsive design movement. It takes a lot of work to make the desktop version take advantage of all that space of the desktop. It's just much easier to throw up the mobile version on the desktop and say, hey, see, it looks the same as it does on your phone. That's great, right? And all these issues come into play. Google is starting to look at the user experience of all this, with responsive design as a different user experience per platform. So Google has to go in with its crawler as if it's all the different platforms. And JavaScript is not necessarily a snapshot tells it all technology. So people are tempted to just generate a snapshot of what the search result screen is, or what a page looks like, and make conclusions about what's above the fold, how much percentage is advertising. But really what you got to do to reproduce that user experience is you got to measure all these different things about that initial experience of clicking through on search results. For example, doing it from different platforms. For example, doing that initial scroll. For example, waiting a few seconds for roadblock ads that are timed to pop up. So you can't just render the page. If there's a timer going that's going to pop up an ad, you've got to wait there a few moments to see that ad pop up. And then does it go away on its own? And does a roadblock ad that works great on desktop totally ruin the mobile experience? These are all things that Google is probably looking at. And these are not clearly under the umbrella of SEO, even though SEO is always a diverse field with lots and lots of, domains, specialties under its umbrella. There's just so many in play these days that the SEO field, just like every other field, is forcing specialization. And some people go to local, some people, have jumped ship and gone to AdWords, social, whatever. And, I'm staying the course with SEO, but when you stay the course with mainstream SEO, you're staying the course with something where you need to run sophisticated tests, to gather data, to look at new metrics that you were never looking at before, to find correlations that you never looked for before, and to find enough correlations to overcome the correlation does not mean causation problem. You need a preponderance of correlations to draw conclusions so that you can say, we've got to change what we're doing to be more like this. Maybe these other sites that you've deemed to be much more successful on your keywords that you are. And people say with the RankBrain and machine learning, things have become so complicated that you can't figure it out anymore. No, these are just derivative results that we're analyzing now, fresh, or with 20 to 25% of things having changed. And so it's just a black box that has input, and you look at the output and you try enough different inputs and you record enough output so that you can start to run tests against it and find these correlations. So just as I resisted the transition from Webmaster to SEO, am I resisting the transition from SEO to data science? And yeah, data science is a keyword, but it's just about as, you know, bombastic and boorish as SEO itself. And I felt these very same feelings as I switched from the prior crazy label, Webmaster, to SEO, from SEO to data science. And that's the point I was trying to make yesterday before I rambled off about all these other things. But there you have it. The second point I wanted to make today, and as I have run out of time once again getting here to the office, is just how much the extension of my tool stack is changing things, my workflow. So it used to be Linux, Python, Vim, and Git, and that was it. That was all you needed for the rest of your career as your safety net thing in your back pocket that could tackle any problem in any domain. And while this is still true to a great extent, I have now added the data science tools to that toolbox because they're so awesome, and it's really rewiring me in my head, almost to the degree that Linux, Python, Vim, and Git each respectively have done, with probably the biggest crazy change that I never expected coming is that I'm falling in love with a web-based IDE, integrated development environment, like environment, a little bit redundant, but Jupyter Notebook, previously IPython Notebook, really is that cool. And you know, anyone involved in Python will be hearing about it more. And I'm modifying my thing, you know, my shtick, my spiel onto the internet to very much encompass that, because, you know, it's hot. It's where to be if you use Python and are doing anything with data. So thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you again soon, and don't forget to subscribe.